Today I want to show you a long-tail tubular cast-on. You want to use a needle size one or two sizes smaller than the project needle. So if you were using a 5 for your project, you would use like a 4 or a 3 for the tubular cast-on. I would say only go down one needle size for a sock because you want that edge to be super stretchy. You can deal with a slightly firmer edge for a sweater. I'm using double points today just for ease of filming. You can do it on a circular, or you could do it on anything else, but when you're doing on a circular, just be careful not to let the stitches before they're anchored go onto the cord of the circular needle. They'll just kind of untwist themselves and get all complicated. So let me show you how to start. You're going to start with a slip knot. You want a tail. It's not going to be as long as a standard long tail cast on tail. Let's see. So you use the standard hand setup, except rather than flipping your palm up like that, leave it like this. It's a little bit easier. And we're going to count this slip knot as your first stitch, which means that you want the first one to be a purl. So that's kind of just my physical reminder about how to make a purl. So if we're counting this one as a knit stitch, then the next one would be a purl, and you would go behind your index finger strand, in front of your thumb strand, scoop underneath both of them, and snug up. So let me show you what this looks like. Let's see if I can get... Okay, so you can kind of see that the strand that's now my index finger strand, well, it's always been my index finger strand, is kind of making what looks like a purl bump at the base of that stitch. So that's a purl. Let me show you walk you through a knit. So if you go in front of your thumb strand, over your index finger strand, scoop underneath both, back to home base, and that gives you a knit stitch. So let's do a purl again. Behind and underneath your index finger strand, over and in front of your thumb strand, scoop underneath both of them, and come back to home. So you'll be alternating these. That's a knit. That's a purl. Let's walk through these again. So a knit goes in front of your thumb strand, over your index finger strand, scoop underneath both, and bring it back to home. So the key is to make sure that you've got the twist always happening at the bottom of your needle. If you end up with a twist up here, you're going to end up with extra stitches and it's going to be weird. So you got to keep it snug and make sure that at the end of each stitch you get the twist at the bottom of your needle. So let's do a purl stitch. Go behind the index finger strand, over the thumb strand, scoop underneath both, and bring it back to home. So I find that rocking it a little bit can kind of snug it up without having to drop your hand position with your left hand. So we get this sort of interesting alternation going here. You can see that the knit stitches are actually, in this case, oriented properly, and the purl stitches are not. I don't know how well you can see that. You'll see it really well on the next section of this. So let me get a couple more of these on the needle. And once you get into the rhythm, you kind of rock and twist and rock and twist. I also find it helpful to use my index finger and thumb on my right hand to sort of moosh the twist into the right place so that it's always underneath the needle. So let's do a knit and a purl. And if you're going to let your left hand go, pinch the cross with your right fingers so that everything stays where it needs to be. Because if you let it go, everything undoes itself. So let's see, undo it back to a point where you can tell what's going on. There we go. Okay, and let's do a purl. Okay, and a knit and a purl, and a knit and a purl. knit and purl. Okay, that'll give us a good base. All right, so pinch that cross until you're ready to give it a turn. I like to actually tie an overhand knot in my tail ends. So here, let me show you. I've got my tail and my working yarn here, and I like to just tie the two in a knot. And actually, usually I use my mouth to help me with this, but my mouth is behind the camera. So see, I've got a knot there at the base just to make it my life a little bit simpler. Okay, so you're gonna flip your work, and with this cast on you have to anchor your first row before you can move on. So if you're going to join this in the round, you would still need to work this first anchoring row before you divide the stitches into the round and join. So you'll see from the other side our purls were reverse oriented, but because we're looking at the back side now our knits are reverse oriented. So you can see that this stitch has its right leg in the back instead of in the front. So we're going to knit it through the back loop. Because we don't want to twist this edge, we want to make this edge stay as loose and malleable as possible. So knit that stitch through the back loop, bring your yarn to the front to do the purl, bring your yarn to the back, knit through the back loop, because this is a knit one, purl one, alternating cast on. And purl and knit. And it's really important while you're working this anchoring row not to, you know, stop in the middle or pull your needles separate, because it's kind of fragile at this juncture, which is why you have to do the anchoring row. So purl that one, knit through the back loop, purl, and knit through the back loop all the way across. I'm moving too much for this to focus. Let me just get through these and then I will show you what it looks like. See, right now I'm getting a little bit too much space between my needles. It looks like I wasn't quite as studious as I could have been with it while I was anchoring the bottom twist underneath the needle. I've also got a cat off screen trying to get involved with this yarn. So let's see. Okay, so when you get to the last stitch, that one is a purl, so we're just going to purl that. And what we've got here is a nice tubular edge, and as you continue with the ribbing, it will get even prettier and more even. A tubular cast on is great when you really need an edge that's clean, sophisticated, and still stretchy. The stretch that you get with a tubular cast on is better than a long tail. It's makes great top of socks. It gives you a really professional edge for a sweater or a hat. You can continue on in this ribbing for a little while so it doesn't roll, or the whole thing could be in this ribbing. It's really wonderful. Unfortunately, this tubular cast on doesn't work for knit 2 purl 2 ribbing. It only works with knit 1 purl.